The work session for the Annapolis City Council on Thursday, October 19th, 2023 will be called to order at 3 p.m. This time, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. City Attorney, please present the item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is presentation, ID 14123, update on the City Dock project and next steps.
So far.
Sheila's going to be presenting.
Ready, Mr. Mayor?
All set when you guys are. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council and City Manager. We are delighted to be here to share all the tremendous progress that's been underway, but more importantly, to hear your direction and your feedback. We have our partners with us today. Matt Fleming was not able to join us from the Resiliency Authority, so I have handed out Matt's comments for all of you. But we are so pleased to have the Naval Academy, Zoe Johnson, who is the Academy Community Liaison, Captain Schwartz, who is the Commanding Officer for Naval Support Activity in Annapolis. We have Chris Haley to my left, who has done an amazing job leading the cultural legacy effort for the city. James Sink to my right, landscape architect Mahan Reichel. Bryce Turner to my left, BCT Architects. Kristen Peronis, CEO of Visit Annapolis, who'll be glad to answer any questions you have. So with that said, gets forward. There we go. With that said, what we'd like to share with you tonight is all of the activities that have been going on concurrently over the last 9 months. You certainly are aware of the work with the garage getting completed, but at the same time as the garage was being completed, a tremendous amount of coordination headed up by our Public Works Director, Burr Vogel, working with the Resiliency Authority and the Navy in order to bring forward a highly integrated resiliency system. The City Dock Park went from conceptual, based on all the comments we received during the spring, to a detailed enhanced park you'll see this evening. And the Maritime Welcome Center came forward in September as a conceptual plan along with Prince George Street Park, both of which are really being seen for the first time this past month. So with that said, I'd like to turn this over to Burr Vogel.
And I'm going to turn it right over to Captain Schwartz.
Hey, good afternoon, folks. Thanks for having us. Like I said, Chris Schwartz, I've been the commanding officer of NSA Annapolis for about 90 days now. So welcome the opportunity to be here, as well as kind of a little bit of share, how we're supporting this project and helping move forward, and kind of some shared responsibility, if you will. So NSA Annapolis, biggest tenant. So we own the land, to think of the easiest terms, of the Naval Academy. And our tenant, or our ownership, is of the buildings there, the land, infrastructure, resiliency projects, and working with our partner, Zoe Johnson, who runs most of that through NAVFAC. So obviously a lot of shared interests. As you know, the Naval Academy is located at the intersection of the Severn River and the Chesapeake Bay. And then the heart and the points where we share is King George Street and Prince George Street as well, and how the relationship with the city dock. And just like the city of Annapolis, countering sea level rising, climate change and flooding and the storm surges, we've also taken on some big projects well with that. Our planning right now really goes out to 2065 that we've started those projects. Those projects, if you see, and for those that haven't, we're welcome to bring it down to the Farragut seawall, which we've already started. We're about 40% done with that, raising the seawall there about 8 feet. Our studies actually go all the way out to 2100, is where I think the city is right now, as projects are about to 2050. So that sea level rising and sea walls, et cetera. So still working through a lot of the designs there, but that's kind of where we're at with that. The way we're kind of approaching climate change and sea level rising is really like defense in depth. There's both the walls we're raising, but also there's the flooding and the storm surge. So there's a lot of redesign, both on the Naval Academy, the grounds there, the buildings, the infrastructures, and some of the buildings we're going to build in the future as well, as we tackle and then how we intersect with the city of Annapolis, specifically at City Dock there. So we are working with the city, especially in phase 2, on some areas, some challenging areas with as it relates to Prince George Street and City Dock development with generators. And our team is meeting early next week to kind of work out some of those nuance and issues. But I'm positive, we can figure that out and get a clear path. So anyway, I just want to say thank you and happy to be part of this. I appreciate it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Burr Vogel.
Okay, before we talk about resiliency, I just do want to take a moment to celebrate the success of the Hillman Garage. It is no small feat to finish a project on time. Oftentimes you're happy if you're only a month or 2 or 3 late. In this case, the team was 2 months early. And part of the sense of urgency in terms of getting the next phase of City Dock going in this next year is to really maintain that momentum, the continuity of the great team that we have in place. With that, we'll move forward to resiliency. Just a reminder, we are protecting to an elevation of flood level 8, and Hurricane Isabella in 2003 was a 6.4 using the North American vertical datum of 1988. So we've got a little bit of a buffer there with a Isabella level of storm. But by the time 2050, 2060, 2070 roll around, sea level rise, land subsidence will have combined to make, essentially, we'll have about that same level of protection in 20 or 30 years. Construction phasing, I think since the last time we talked, the only major change here is that Susan Campbell, we're no longer planning on doing work there next year. Next year will essentially be a preparatory phase in 2024, the next 12 months, where we'll be tackling the electrical work. There's a massive amount of work to bring in new transformers, electrical cabinets, switchgear, and then all of the cables and ductwork to get rid of the electrical panels that we have scattered around City Dock today. Phase 2 will be the primary effort of the construction, where it would be most visible. At the end of Phase 2, we will have the new City Dock Park, so that's super exciting, and that will start 12 months from now and finish right before the fall 2025 boat show. And then the last phase is kind of some of the wrap-up stuff, but installing, the most important thing, installing our storm drain and pumps and the deployable flood barriers. Budget-wise, in June, when we had our last working session, I talked a little bit about some of the things we wanted to be able to do. We're pretty close to having all of that work firmed up. And those enhancements, I'm calling them here, are underground and the overhead electrical lines that run from the Harbor Master up in front of Middleton's and McGarvey's and up to the first pole on Pinckney Street, very near to the Shiplap House. And the other thing we wanted to be able to fit into the project budget is a extension of the bulkhead, the concrete bulkhead that currently goes around the dinghy dock and the Donner parking lot, extending that all the way down to Newman Street. So we don't have to do flood barriers along Compromise Street, which would be very challenging and look pretty ugly. Last note on funding, we're really fortunate to have a Maryland legislative delegation that's very effective in supporting in this project. Already we're up to about $15 million with $3 million in the pipeline. So I did want to recognize the great work that those folks do for us.
Thanks so much. So this slide is important because it reflects the promise you, the council, the mayor, the city manager, made to the community as we started to kick off this process. And we hope, as you're looking at the park and the Welcome Center and the other features of the Resiliency Project, we hope that we, the city, will be able to bring home every aspect of your promise. First of all, for a stronger and more resilient Annapolis, a commitment to protect our future for the next century, a transformative downtown experience, honoring our rich and diverse heritage, unlocking access to the water for everyone in our community. And as a result of these promises fulfilled, we will be creating a national model for other cities nationally to follow. So this evening, when you look at the park that James Sink will be presenting to you, it incorporates all of the guidance we heard from the council, planning commission, HPC, City Dock Action Committee, and the community. And what perhaps is most important is that it weaves Annapolis's cultural legacy into the fabric of the park design itself. Chris Haley.
Thank you very much, Eileen. What a pretty green that is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council, for having me here today. We've moved on. We keep moving on, thinking of different ideas, different aspects that can be incorporated within the legacy of the City Dock. And one of the things that I think was very impressive and helped contribute to my brain, certainly, and my heart, was when we had the general meeting for all the stakeholders, I think barely a month ago, where we had a subcommittee where we talked about the legacy as well, and things that wanted to be incorporated. And it was good to hear from different voices who didn't agree with what we had said before, for one. That was very, very enlightening and encouraging. But reiterating the fact that we want to acknowledge the African-American community as well as other communities. It's not just one story, it's everybody's story, because the waters flow around the world, not just to Africa, not just to India, not just to Asia. So we want to be aware of that, and where any individual who landed here in Maryland, in Annapolis, in Anne Arundel County is reflected in some way within the City Dock as it will be designed. And also to keep in mind that within the last several months that we've worked on this, we know now it's not just one symbol that we have to focus on and rack our brains about, but we can expand it throughout the whole vast, I'm calling it vast, from Market House all the way down to Susan Campbell Park. We can incorporate these visions, the symbolism throughout that, which makes it still a challenging project, but not an impossible project. And within that, some of the things that we've been asked to come up with were ideas, themes such as cultural diversity, industriousness, and also inclusivity. And we were tasked with some quotes. And I have a few which I want to share with you today, just to give you an idea of what we think could be evocative of what we want the city dock to mean, not just for ourselves, but for our visitors who come here from other states, from other countries, from other nations. One would be from James Baldwin. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Thurgood Marshall, where you see wrong or inequality or injustice, speak out, because this is your country. This is your democracy. Make it, protect it, pass it on. And also a native son, Harriet Tubman, and this is the quote I had not heard before, so I probably am going to vet it to make sure that it's her, that's somebody speaking in her spirit. Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. So those are just some of the quotes that I think are going to be helpful as we move forward in this venture to incorporate it in whichever way, whether it's a fountain, whether it's a kiosk, whether it's verbiage on steps that will tell everyone's story and not just one story alone. Thank you.
Chris, you're always amazing. Thank you so much.
So as Chris mentioned, we have the privilege to spread the cultural legacy fabric throughout the park. And this plan shows how we'll be doing that, and we'll get into some of the detail in the following slides. But we really have the opportunity to engage people of all different backgrounds on various levels through this strategy. First, starting in what we're calling Alex Haley Plaza at the end of Ego Alley. This is where our journey begins with the Alex Haley statue slightly relocated but still in place, and the preserved story wall along Compromise Street, continuing to convey Alex Haley's vision for reconciliation, healing, and honoring all of our collective cultural heritage. The tree-lined promenade, which will include a timeline recognizing the arrivals and important events in the history of various groups of people that call Annapolis home, will be the next thing people will experience. At the beginning and the end of this timeline will be marked signage similar to the photos you see on the right-hand side, to just kind of call attention to what people are walking alongside. At the Dock Street Park, we think we have the opportunity to really be bold and celebratory in our attitude towards the way cultural legacy is incorporated. The grade change in the walls to elevate the park provide us the opportunity to display quotes, as Chris was mentioning, as well as various graphics potentially. And central to the park is an interactive fountain featuring the city's connection with water. In fact, it's the reason the city's here, so we should really celebrate that connection that the people have with the water. And here people will interact both literally with the water, touching it, playing in it, but also figuratively through the graphics and imagery on the surrounding low walls and in the pavement, where we think we can show scenes of industriousness from life on the bay, as well as the various flora and fauna found in the region. The end of City Dock is anchored by Susan Campbell Park, and it's at this location there's proposed a piece of commissioned sculpture, the number 6, which we think is an opportunity for an artist to interpret Annapolis's relationship with the water and the wind. And to the north of Susan Campbell Park is the new Maritime Welcome Center and Bertis House, which we'll be hearing more about shortly. And these facilities will serve as a gateway to the bay, and the adjoining Pocket Park will have the opportunity for more historic and interpretive elements relative to the message and the program inside those buildings. So here, looking at Annapolis's transformed waterfront, we are hoping that by incorporating this fabric of cultural legacy, this park's going to be a place that is welcoming and enjoyed by all types of people. In this bird's eye view, you can see the various components of the park and how they're connected with one another, starting in the foreground with the active park, which we think could really act as the city's residents' living room in this outdoor environment. There's game tables, swings overlooking Ego Alley. And adjacent to that is the elevated Dock Street Park and the large lawn area with the interactive fountain there in the middle, separated by the stage and pergola to Susan Campbell Park at the end. On the north side of the park runs a pedestrian-oriented, quote-unquote, street. And this is where the downtown will be connected to the Maritime Welcome Center in this safe and leisurely atmosphere. So working over the past few years with the City Dock Action Committee and various citizen groups to understand how people are going to use the city dock, we think there's a lot of potential for a lot of different uses, and we believe that there's going to be something for everyone. First, there are the daily and impromptu programs shown here in this diagram. There will be things like neighbors playing ping pong in the active park, picnicking in the open lawn, families enjoying the interactive fountain, and small bands playing for groups potentially dancing in the plaza, playing on that stage under the pergola. Pop-up vendors and food trucks will be able to station themselves on the pedestrian-oriented street. And there's the potential for watermen landing their craft at the Maritime Welcome Center and sharing their catch. Next, of course, there's large festivals and events like the Boat Show, which just took place and will continue to take place at City Dock. And we're showing in this diagram how those large-scale events will be accommodated in the park. The Singer-Songwriters Festival will be able to set up its large temporary stage at the end of Dock Street, adjacent to the active park, where those planters and furnishings are planned to be movable, so people can enjoy the concert from that location. Events like commissioning and the Associated Air Show can be viewed from this location. Movie night, summer concert series, and outdoor theater could take place on the stage and could be viewed from either the lawn in Susan Campbell Park or the Fountain Plaza. And of course, this is going to be a prime location for viewing fireworks at the 4th of July. Last, we wanted to close out this portion of the presentation with a few vignettes sharing the kind of human experience inside the park. This view is of the active park with the movable planters and various table games that we're proposing. Next, in the interactive fountain area with the stage and pergola in the background. And finally, the promenade view looking west down Ego Alley with one of the portals to the elevated lawn area there on the right-hand side. And next, I'll turn it over to Eileen, who's going to talk about the planning process.
So the next steps after, Bryce is going to talk, and then we were going to hold the questions to the end. Is that okay? We have, after I speak, Bryce will be finishing it up.
I'd like to ask, is it Bryce, a question about his portion before you go on?
So, Alderman Finlayson, I'm going to hold them to the end because we're a little tight, but if you could just remember what slide you have, and we'll come back, and I'll go to you first.
Okay, I didn't see numbers. I was looking at them, so I couldn't see numbers on the slide. So that's fine. I'll wait. He can slide back until I find the
We'll find your slide, no worries. So you can see, council can see with all the detail that has been embedded embellished with the park. This came from the direction not just of the council, the commission, and the community. So now you have really an enhanced City Dock Park as a result of all of your input. We now also have, thanks to O1523, which you adopted in July, we are now able to bring forward the initial concept design for the Maritime Welcome Center. Again, this is the kickoff, and we have started to do a tremendous amount of outreach. That will continue, but we wanted as early as possible to get council's thoughts on this. The thing that is so important about this Welcome Center is that our City Dock Action Plan, our underlying maritime zoning, and our maritime strategy, which you adopted in 2021, all demand that there be this kind of maritime waterfront access for our entire community. So this structure finally realizes what the city has been promising. Bryce?
Thank you, Eileen. Good to see you all again. So we want to talk a little bit about some of the activities that that James and Eileen both alluded to. The Maritime Welcome Center is going to incorporate a lot of various activities that we need to have obviously here at City Dock. And of course, one is a visitors function where Visit Annapolis will have a small presence. The harbor master has a very important role here, obviously, and we've worked closely with them to incorporate space for them in the building. You know, the things that Chris mentioned with the legacy and the cultural legacy experience that we want to be able to share, and we think that you know, Maritime Welcome Center and Burtis will be a great place to do that. But we think we also want to be able to still provide people this access to water. You know, when individual homeowners own property up to the water's edge, it makes it very difficult for the public to access the water. City Dock is a place where you can do that, and it could be fishing, paddle boarding, kayaking, some other things that obviously we have a very busy harbor and a lot of things to control, but people should be able to have that access. And we're seeing more and more fishing in all these kind of waterfront communities as well. So it's a great opportunity for people to dip their toe in the water, if you will. That's what we've been hearing for these last 5 years, and we're excited about being able to make those things happen. Next slide. So we're going to talk about this area in the upper right corner of the slide. This is the Maritime Welcome Center in the Prince George Park. Next slide. And so this is a site plan, and this shows you the Prince George Street Park. That's just to the north side of Burtis here on the slide, and then the Maritime Welcome Center. In order for Burtis to be appropriately viewed and to fit within its context, it's really important that we raise the land around it, obviously, so it's not sitting up too high. And so we've coordinated closely with Preservation Maryland in making that happen. But the elevation of the land around it will have Burtis about 18 inches above the adjoining grade. The Maritime Welcome Center, the finished floor of which will be about 1 foot lower than Burtis, but that grade will also be about the same. It's about 6.5 feet above sea level there. You'll see some kayaks here and a new floating dock that we're proposing. It's an educational area. One of the things we heard in the work session here a couple of weeks ago was how important it is to have some environmentally sensitive educational programs for young people at the gateway to the Chesapeake, and that's exactly what this is. Next slide. So let's see, these are a little out of order, but is that your next slide? Okay. Well, anyway, this is showing the Burtis House from Prince George Street and this Prince George Street Park right up to the left where the trees are. So you can see how the grade raises. We've got a transition from this very low area at Prince George Street. And then to the right of Burtis is our new Maritime Welcome Center. We've worked very hard to create this connection between the two buildings. The reason the buildings need to be connected is in order to have vertical circulation back and forth in Burtis for disabled folks. Next slide. The Maritime Welcome Center really incorporates a lot of functions, as I said, but it also replaces a lot of things that are in this kind of hideous asphalt parking lot that we have at the water's edge. I don't know how else to say it. You know, we've got the birdhouse in the upper right corner in that image. We've got the Harbor Master building that's existing. We've got a lot of cars that fortunately we were able to relocate at Hillman Garage. And so all of these functions take up space, and they're now incorporated in the Maritime Welcome Center. We think we've been very clever by creating a lower level, a basement level, if you will, that'll help take care of some of the public toilets. Next slide, please. So I just want to talk a little bit about why we've located the building where we have and the importance of some of the view corridors from downtown Annapolis. This is one of my favorite views of the water, personally, in Annapolis at the top of Main Street, where you look out over the water and you can actually see even the eastern shore. There are some trees that will be new trees. One of the other things we're incorporating is a lot of shading, as James mentioned. Some of those trees are seen in the image, but you still see a lot of the water as well. Now, you don't see Burtis in this image. You don't see the Maritime Welcome Center because they're around the corner. But the next couple of slides, if you can just forward, Eileen, thank you. This is kind of a view study we did from the foot of Main Street. We wanted to understand as well, you know, how we're impacting the view corridors at City Dock. So if I'm standing by Buddy's Crabs and I'm looking out over City Dock, 110 Compromise and the adjacent structures kind of narrow your view rather tightly with the existing Harbor Master building. So that that view cone, if you will, is very tight. And in the next slide, you'll see that with the new location of the Maritime Welcome Center, it's true that it actually decreases that just a little bit from that perspective, but it opens it up so from all the other perspectives. So this is from the steps of the Market House, the front door of the Market House, where you can see the cone of vision, if you will, from there with the existing building shown in black, which is the Harbor Master building. And once we remove that building, and with the new Maritime Welcome Center, it actually increases that cone of vision to some extent, which I think is a good thing. And what impresses me so here is that when James shows those images, which I believe the next one is, of City Dock, that you start to see how it opens up. We have this incredible park now, and it's also providing us resiliency by increasing the height of the land and forming a natural boundary that does not require 100% flood walls to achieve resiliency. So this is a historic image of Burtis House and Prince George Street. So you're looking down Prince George Street in the middle of the slide, and that's Burtis to the left. One of the things I think that we all love about City Dock is the hubbub, the busy character of it, the industriousness, as Chris likes to talk about. And that's always been there. Now, our maritime needs have changed incredibly. It's much more pleasure now with boating and the activities that happen there. But there's always been a lot of stuff happening at City Dock. You can see some of the structures here adjacent to Burtis in this location. And of course, City Dock was full of buildings at that time. It's going to be really opened up, and it's going to be available for the public and greater access, which I think is fantastic. But historically, there's always been a lot of buildings there. So when we started playing earlier this year, we started working on the design of this structure in earnest. We took those last 4 years and got all kinds of input about the needs of what we needed to do with this structure. And when we started thinking about the design, we worked closely with the Action Committee and especially the design subcommittee of the Action Committee. And we really used residential structures to think about what would be appropriate here. We did not think brick was appropriate. We thought Burtis with siding made a lot more sense for us to consider siding. We in no ways want to replicate a historic building. That is not the right direction to go. But we thought that the wood could be natural and maybe soft, and so these are some residential structures in which we did that. With a 32-foot height restriction, you're really unable to do anything that is much larger than a residential scale building. These are very petite buildings. Next slide. So this is the slide that James was showing earlier, which I think is amazing how it shows how things open up. It's incredible green space and active park activities that is really fantastic. And we'll have some trees that'll provide some very needed shade. Next slide. And so some of the massing studies here show you the location of the Maritime Welcome Center. This is kind of looking towards the field house, so the Naval Academy across. So you can see how it kind of fits within the Dock Street street wall, that kind of urban fabric that I think works well. Next slide. Looking towards the Market House and down the other end of Dock Street. So this portion of Dock Street shown in brick will be our new Wooners. This is a pedestrian-dominated street. Very few vehicles would be allowed to go through there except emergency vehicles. And so I think our new Maritime Welcome Center, which is shown ghosted in here for the purposes of massing, fits well and kind of anchors Dock Street in this location. Next. So these are the floor plans, which I'll just go over quickly, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of components here. Visit Annapolis, boater facilities that need to be replaced from the existing Harbor Master building, and that need to be much more robust than they are currently. We need to be a world-class location for boating, and we're not currently with the facilities that we provide. Burtis House, which will have a lot of cultural legacy kinds of uses. A Waterman's Co-op idea on the front of this building, which is really on the front porch, if you will, where we transition down to the lower grade, where we think there's a great opportunity for watermen to perhaps, share their goods, bring some crabs or oysters in this location, and it might be a little bit of theater, but we think it would be really fantastic for people to see at least some glimpse of what it was like when this was a working port. Next slide. So upstairs, we have the Harbor Master function and a conference suite, which will be for city functions and other opportunities. Next slide. And then in the basement space, which will be dry-proofed, we have showers and other amenities for boaters, and the bulk of our public toilets, as well as storage. The one thing we heard was that the city needs storage for all the kinds of programming activities that we're talking about for the park. Next slide. So I just want to talk a little bit more about the design of the structure. I think you can see it in this aerial view where we're anchoring Dock Street. We worked with two different shed roofs, and in working with some of our committee, Michael Dowling and Leo Wilson and some others, we looked at two different shed roofs that keeps the overall height of the building down. And we were also tasked with looking at ways to create some diversity along the street wall. So one of the shed buildings is a little further back than the other, and that creates an opportunity for this deck that's outdoors, which provides access for the harbor master and kind of a little crow's nest for them to view the harbor. Next. So this is looking at it from an aerial more or less from the Market House. You can see we've worked very hard to create this kind of a hyphen space between the existing Burtis House on the left and the new structure. Next slide. And then this really shows kind of the waterfront side of the building, where we think that some flags and signage will be very important to announce this building to the water. And you can also see Burtis here, and which is right behind this kind of ornamental tree, and the Prince George Street Park, which is adjacent to it. And so you can see how the connection is not terribly dissimilar from historically the way structures were at City Dock. So this is an elevation view. As architects, we call this an elevation. We're looking at everything flat. You don't see it in perspective. So the Naval Academy Fieldhouse appears to loom large in the background because it's shown at its true height. But You can see how the peak of our building is about 29 feet, 10 inches above the finished floor of the building. And that will be significantly less than a lot of the other heights along Dock Street, some of which would not be allowed in today's historic district current zoning. But so you get a variety of shapes, a variety of heights, and I think that's what makes Annapolis this wonderful tapestry of architecture. Next. So this is kind of the view from the water and the pier, and you can see how those two different shed roofs are separated from one another and set back from one another. The materials are all natural. There'll be a wood cedar shake roof, and that comes right down the side of the building. The windows are a little bit larger than some traditional buildings, but we were encouraged by all the stakeholders to make them large enough so you could really enjoy the views out of this building. And then the siding of the building is more of a vertical siding, which we find some examples of in Annapolis, and we think that'll have a very soft feel. And you get a front porch here, so there's a lot going on. It's got some variety, and I think feels like some of the better examples of architecture in Annapolis that are newer structures. Next slide.
Bryce, thanks so much. The next steps will be for the City Dock plan, which James shared with you, to go forward to the Planning Commission probably in December. The Maritime Welcome Center, we are looking for your comments, your direction, as well as Planning Commission, HPC, and we have an ongoing community outreach effort. We've already heard, and these are some of the comments we heard from the City Dock work session, everything from wanting more water access on the waterfront side to looking for diverse business opportunities as the park development takes place, continuing the City Dock resiliency all the way around City Dock, and looking for sustainable features, bringing back the Waterman. So those are just a few of the many comments we've heard. Now we're making history. We are opening it up to our council.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for this presentation. I'm sorry that I don't have a copy of it. But I'd like to go to, I think it was James, who gave us the kind of the point-by-point layout of all of the things that would be included in City Dock. His comment about the Alex Haley Monument, the story wall, the Compass Rose, what I thought I heard him say, they were slightly being replaced or displaced. And I would like specifically to see in that beautiful diagram where those features will take place.
Sure, not a problem.
Where is Alex Haley going to be, and where is the story wall going to be, and where specifically is the Compass Rose, and so forth?
Are you able to see the cursor on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is approximately the location he sits today, and this is where he will be in the future. The Compass Rose is behind the view here. It's not being touched at all as part of this project. And the story wall is here, and it's also remaining in place. We're not disturbing it at all. So the only thing that really changes is the exact location of Alex Haley, but it's about 15 or 20 feet from where he sits today.
Okay, so will he be raised so that, you know, right now frequently water's up to his chest, if not his chin. So how will that be different with the movement to where he's going?
It's a good question. He'll be slightly higher than he is today because we are elevating this whole area here at the dinghy dock about a foot. So it's going to have less frequent nuisance flooding. We're still determining the exact location of the flood barrier in this location, so I think your comment is one that we have to take into consideration as we're looking at the exact alignment of the flood barrier, because if the flood barrier was behind that planted area, he would, in a large flood, it would do what you're saying and come up to his lap.
Okay, thank you. One other question that has to do with the harbor master. The view from the harbor master's new building. Where is the harbor master's office in that new building? Maybe I missed that description. But is the harbor master on the back side of the building, the water side of the building?
It faces Ego Alley. It is, if you can see the screen here, it is in that kind of left side shed roof, and as well as behind the balcony. So they have access to the balcony so they can get out there and look over the entire waterfront. And we think that's going to work well for them, even though they said they use cameras, of course, for a lot of their work. But yeah, they'll be on the upper level, second level, on that left side of the building.
Okay, not on the inside facing the water's edge, they're facing the dock.
So this is the floor plan that shows it, and you can see the harbor master footprint there. They have a door that gets out to the balcony's edge, and at the bottom there, you'll see the harbor master.
Can you pull that slide up for us, please?
It's because of the zoom function. There we go.
I can see it, now I can't.
Right. Okay, now we can too. So there's the harbor master shown at the top of the plan. They have about 1,000 square feet, and they're pushing for more. But we're hoping this is going to work for them because they have some outdoor space that works as well. The bottom left of the plan, you see the crow's nest that we've provided for them, so that they can really look out over the entire waterfront and have a line of sight. But that's their space, and so it will be much more accessible to the waterfront than the existing harbor master building is.
And the harbor master will also use the conference room. It's going to be a shared flex space. So the harbor master will have consistent access to that, because it's not like it's going to be booked all the time. So really, the whole upper floor is the harbor master's. And then the balcony will be somewhere where tourists can go freely, but also, we've designated an area that we call the crow's nest. So they get a full view down Spar Creek, a full view of Ego Alley into the dinghy dock, and then they have access to pretty much the whole second floor.
Well, I would hope that we would give the harbor master the priority as opposed to a conference room. It just seems like she should be on that side where she could get a panoramic view without cutting through a conference room to see it all. So please consider her scope of view also. Thank you.
Thank you.
So who's next? Alderman Gay, then Alderman Shannemeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few questions. My first question, as I've asked every time we do this, I did not see any mention of the traffic pattern and in particularly the traffic circle in the intersection of, I think, Dock and Randall Street. And I mention that because we're spending $59 million of the state, city, and federal government's money on a project that looks very nice from, these images, and we can't move forward with that disastrous traffic plan. Every single weekend, regardless if it's an event, a flood, whatever, it is backed up there because you constantly have pedestrians crossing the street. You have an odd lane situation there where you have half a turning lane that's supposed to be going toward the Market House, one that's going straight to get through, and another that's trying to get on Dock. And with the pedestrian situation there, the backup from the traffic circle constantly with cars trying to get up Main Street, it's just impossible. And so why would we spend $59 million and not try to fix that?
I'll offer just my thoughts. We already have enough on our plates with the project as it is, as a park. Very challenging to get the funding, the grants, bring all of the different stakeholders together and get an agreement on what that is going to be, traffic is a whole nother animal on top of that, right? So just, it's important, and I completely agree with you. It's just beyond the scope of this particular engineering team. It was never part of what we envisioned for them. It's
And if I could just-
something we'll tackle
Yeah.
as more or less a follow-on effort. It's gonna be, because we're only going to get more visitors. We're only going to get more traffic. We can't just leave Randall Street the way it is. I agree with you completely.
I mean, I would love to see the traffic simplified there. I think there are things that could be done to make it better. However, I will tell you that this is going to be a pedestrian-oriented downtown. And if it's successful, that's the way it's going to be. And it's kind of like Yogi Berra says, no one goes there anymore because it's too crowded. Well, you know, of course, people will. But that's the way that prime real estate is. If it's desirable and people want to be there, the traffic is terrible. And that's just the way that it is. You know, we can't really have both, especially with waterfronts that really interrupt the cars' paths.
I'd like the idea to make it people-centric. I do, but I know people, and people are going to be in their cars. And so lastly on this, would that mean that after the city dock project is completed, the city would then be trying to find grants and federal dollars to undergo some sort of traffic plan in the downtown area, including the alderman's proposal to have Duke flipped? I'm assuming that would be included in this as well.
Let's do it. We are the city, right?
Yeah, okay.
And we have to re-brick Main Street. We have to talk about the Circle, the T,
All of that.
Market Square. All those things have to come into play. There will be 100 less cars parking on City Dock. So with smart technology, we'll discourage people taking that right-hand turn onto Dock Street. Mm-hmm. And so with that eliminated, and maybe better flow through, you know, if traffic lights are what the city wants, that could be considered. If they're not what the city wants, they could not be considered. So
Yeah. My second question is in regards to the cultural history piece. And, you know, I'm excited to see the proposals. I think it's, and this is not intended to be disrespectful in any way at all. I think with the opportunity to tell our story in this town, it should be bigger. I'm not really a fan of the written scripture, verbiage, or storytelling along the sidewalk. I think that's fantastic. I think some sort of kiosk is important. But think of like these, you know, southern cities that tell the story of their history. They often, you know, include sculptures or, you know, interactive history. I'm thinking of the lynching memorial. I'm thinking of that amazing statue in Georgia of the slaves like coming or out of the water. I just think we shouldn't be afraid to tell the true story of African American history, and I don't think that we should downplay it or you know, put caveats on the history. I think be upfront. You know, slavery was here. You know, there should be a sculpture of what it would have looked like if an African slave was getting off of a ship at our city dock, or brought to our city dock. I think that was just a tiny bit underwhelming. I hope that we can tweak that and put some money into that piece. And then lastly, I just had one point on the access to recreational activities. I think that's fantastic. And I'm curious in your plan, if there is, with the kayaks and the other water activities, is there a plan to maybe have that connected in some way to the Eastport side? You know, I'm just curious about that. Or is the plan just that, you know, you run and stay in the harbor area? Or is there just for connectivity purposes and that's all?
I think something like that would make a lot of sense because people are going to want to go back and forth. I see Bert leaning forward. Did you want to add something?
Well, that's just between me or Bryce to talk about the connections piece.
Bryce.
Because we, in other presentations, we talk a lot about ferries and access to places like Cars Beach.
Right.
Hawkins Cove is really important in terms of what we want to do on water access. Bryce, you take the first shot.
Yeah, no, I think connectivity is important, and being able to do it in a way that you can get more than one person at a time in a boat, for instance, like a little ferry, makes sense. We've already got a lot of activity on the water here. But as a gateway to other places that are a little bit further afield than Eastport, this will be a great gateway. And I think that's where we provide information at this Maritime Welcome Center about those short day trips or an hour trip or whatever it may be. So those are important connections that I think will be fantastic. We've got a lot to coordinate with the existing boat traffic that's there too. So that makes it challenging.
One last, Mr. Mayor, I'm so sorry.
If I could just
Yeah.
follow up then. I'm really excited about this electric ferry thing. And some people, you know, if you just listen to folks, they kind of think that's a little bit out there. Who's going to ride a ferry across the bridge? Why wouldn't they just ride their bike across the bridge? Why wouldn't they just drive and park in Hillman Garage? But I think about it from the standpoint of, let's say somebody is going to dinner at the Boatyard or Lunis or something like that. But then you want to stop over and just visit City Dock and spend a few minutes. Electric ferries can provide this very convenient, free connection from you for somebody who maybe parks. You know, parking over in Eastport, I know is a touchy thing, but we want to open up some of those marina businesses and work on that. But let's say you're parked there in Eastport and you just want to visit City Dock. Well, now you don't have to get in your car. You don't have a 15 or 20-minute walk. So we think that's exciting, and the reverse is true as well. If you're downtown, but you want to visit Eastport, it makes a great connection to those two destinations. But also, again, getting back to Hawkins Cove, I'm really excited about the opportunity of folks who live around there to walk down the street or through a path, jump on the ferry, and then access all these amenities without having to get in a car. So just different modes of transportation here are really exciting to me that don't involve cars. So anyway, I'm excited about the electric ferry. Maybe almost as excited as the mayor, but he's real excited too.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
Go on, tell them about our trip.
Yes, we did have a fantastic trip on the an electric boat, and it was great. It was very cold, but the boat got us to the bridge and back in like 22 minutes. It was efficient, it was fast, it was all of those good things, and so I'm excited about that as well. My last question, how does the Welcome Center intertwine with the existing businesses in that area, and how will that be impacted? I'm curious, that strip of businesses on Dock Street, so.
Well, I think one of the most important things that this project does, it is historic in a lot of ways, and I really believe that the economic development that comes from this is one of the best things about it for existing businesses. We're providing this incredible amenity in front of those existing businesses, and I remember in this room when we first presented the ULI report, and one of the business owners there by Susan Campbell Park, actually on that end, said, well, what about all the parking I'm going to lose? And I think what's amazing is that even though all that parking was right there, those businesses haven't done as well as the businesses there in the heart by the Market House, because it's a more interesting place to be, right? And I think this park changes that. And so it makes it really is an amenity to existing businesses, which I think is great. The Maritime Welcome Center does not compete with the existing buildings. I think one of the most interesting things as well about this plan is we're not building a lot more developer space, right? For some developer to come in and have new space. That's not the key. That's not what's happening here. It is meant to reinvigorate existing businesses and space, and it's going to be a potential windfall for them. It is. So I don't think the Maritime Welcome Center has a negative aspect at all in that regard. I think it draws people, which is going to be good, because a lot of people don't walk that far currently, and I think this is going to encourage them to visit all parts of City Dock.
And I just want to say briefly in regards to Alderman Gay's statement about cultural legacy. This is by no means my presentation wasn't like it's a done deal, and anything I mentioned was already scripted in stone, so to speak. And one of the things that along the lines of what is truth and what is fairy, what is a story, is that early in this process, the thought of a fountain of toleration, or toleration fountain, was brought up. And one of our members, it was Brendan Murray, actually said, well, we shouldn't use the word tolerance because it's not about tolerating people. It's incorporating people. It's including their legacy, not tolerating their legacy, because you tolerate a child. You tolerate the antics of your classmates or things of that sort. So that was voted down, so to speak. So that is definitely a consideration of ours, to be truthful and open and certainly not to sugarcoat anything.
And the sculpture things, I think, is a great opportunity, don't you? That whole area. I will say we've tried to keep it a little tighter now because in 15 minutes we're going to be getting on to the electric trolleys. Thank you. Alderman Schneidermeyer. Speed round.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You can keep this slide up because I just want to really compliment this slide. I absolutely love the street trees planted, the white stone, the white surface on there, the grass planted. All of these things do a lot of fantastic work trying to actually make an area that is right now a parking lot and an unshaded brick square a lot more welcoming for people. And I think the reason Susan B. Campbell Park doesn't get a whole lot of people visiting it outside of events is because it's pretty hostile, even in the park, without any shade whatsoever the majority of the year. So I really love this. I love the idea of the pedestrian street and maybe having food trucks and things on that line. I have a question towards some of the beginning of the electrical work. What is, so with the electrical work, what do we have there now and what are we putting in and how long do we think it's going to be taking for that project, part of the project, to be completed?
I don't have all the details on that. I do know that they are looking especially for the buildings. I'm sorry. I'm Greg Isker. I'm with WSP, with the design firm for the work here. The project manager, Derek Piper, asked me to represent WSP. I'm more involved in the storm drainage and the flooding resiliency on the pump station. Yeah.
Chris, come on.
I didn't mean to ask a hard question.
We've got a lot of breakers. It's a big part of the Harbor Master, not a big part, but it's in the Harbor Master building. It's just full of breakers and supplies power to all of the slips. And then we've got excess power for
Get on the mic, Bert.
Okay. Harbor Master building has breakers. The birdhouse has breakers. And these supplies power to all of the slips along for the boats that are alongside City Dock, and then a lot of power for the boat show as well. So, Chris, go ahead.
So yeah, the electrical service that's in the birdhouse there in the middle of the parking lot, the electrical service that is on the Harbor Master building itself, that'll all be consolidated to a single location down near the Maritime Welcome Center. That all serves, like Burr was saying, the slips all around Ego Alley. There's a lot of power in there for the boat show. There's power in there for Watermark. So that's basically all the things that we're kind of coordinating into a single location. That location will also serve new lighting that's in the park, the new building itself, the Maritime Welcome Center, the resiliency pumps that are going to be out in the parking lot. There'll be some generator space also for those pumps and that kind of thing. So that's basically the electrical consolidation piece.
And the touching on schedule, so want to start in March and finish in October of 24. Because when we start to build the park right after the boat show 12 months from now, all of that existing electrical needs to be turned off and removed, so the new stuff has to be in place.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Savage. Speed round, then Alderman Arnett.
Just a few quick points and then a question. First, I support the circle, but a good answer on that. I think we need to have a lot more of a conversation about options down there and what we might want to do. But that's another conversation down the road. Two, as far as downtown, you talked about emphasizing some of our maritime cultural history. I just want to throw out there, as far as thinking about who our target is, part of it I think is looking towards visitors, but I think we should also think about it as far as looking at our residents. This is really, I think, what we want to see this be is like a central gathering point for city residents. And so I think part of that is focusing on our cultural heritage and history and diversity, which you've talked about. But I kind of want to just throw out there to think beyond just our waterman maritime history, because that's already done at the Maritime Museum very well, and we're going to have a ferry going over there in that direction. I don't think we need to do that. I mean, I know there's the Burrs House down there to tie into, but just to throw this out there, maybe look at ways we can perhaps, because one of the other things that make us very unique in Annapolis is we have 5 bodies of water, right? We have our 4 creeks, and then we have the Severn River. That is very unique. So, we could tie that in with the comp plan that is talking about, what do they call them? The creek sheds, right? As far as tying together, like connecting people with their watersheds, their creeks, because that also furthers that goal of educating people about helping to, connect them to the water and the water in their backyard, the creek, even if they're not right on the water. And maybe we could also tie into that by putting on the map or something we have down there, our water access points, right? That's another big initiative of ours. And I think it'd be a neat thing to show the residents, here's our main connection to the water, and look, there's one right next to you connected to that. I'm sure somebody much more creative than me could come up with some other ideas on that, but I just wanted to kind of give that, throw that out there.
Very doable, and I'm watching the architects on each side of me taking notes that can be incorporated. Great idea.
Good, thank you. I have a number of other things I'll send to you, Eileen, comments and questions, but the one question I want to end on is just, because I wasn't quite, kind of went through quickly, but you mentioned, let's see, the south side having a deployable barrier, but it sounded like you weren't quite sure. Could you basically describe again what you're looking to do on the south side? What kind of deployable barrier are you thinking about? Because I think you mentioned that's in the one slide about a funding shortfall. Is that, did I see that right for the south side? Did you go to the funding slide?
Go to the financing slide. Let's talk about, since we were there. Never mind. We're good.
Yeah, that would be a good place to talk about.
Okay.
Yes, the funding gap you have
so
there.
the funding gap there is really filled if you get this FEMA grant approved, which we're getting very close to. Although we've got a lot of work to satisfy their technical and environmental reviews.
So the south side, if we get that funding, would be a part of the overall project? Because I know at one point we were talking about having that be a future phase. Is that going to be included in everything?
As we show it here, included in everything.
Okay, good.
Right. So this is kind of broken up. The top half of the slide is the city dock street kind of area, and then the bottom part is the compromise or the south side.
Okay. And I think that's good. I've mentioned this before as far as my concern with having them be separate is that, we're spending all this money to do resilience, and if we have a gap on the south side, it's going to undo everything we've just done.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So, okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Speed round, Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I only have one question. Now is the time when facades and footprints come to the fore. And I have lots of comments, but when is the appropriate time to hear from the council on those observations and concerns? We're not doing it today. This is another talking head show. So when do we get to give some input?
Well, the intention was to get some input today and also to do the walkabout. We certainly want to hear some of your comments, what comments today, but we can then come back and schedule more time.
Yeah, we can do a specific one if you want to circle back around. We can schedule that into another meeting too. So this is the first run here.
I just want to hold a place.
Yeah. Thank you. Alderman O'Neill.
Thank you. I promise I'll be fast. So the picture where it has Burtis House. Burtis House looks really pretty, nice white clapboard sides. That's not really what it looks like. And putting this brand new building up against it, what will be the purpose and usage of Burtis House? And is it actually connected? It appears to be connected.
It is connected, and purposefully so. I mean, These historic structures are interesting. It's a very small footprint. It was a small house, obviously. And in order to have accessibility of steps going up from the front, we need the elevator that will be in the Maritime Welcome Center to get people to the upstairs. The uses, can vary. There's opportunity for different types of museums, cultural things. It's not clear yet how exactly what that's going to be, but it is space that's available to us, and we know it will be valuable space.
Thank you.
And Preservation Maryland are planning on redoing the exterior.
Exterior?
Yes,
Exterior,
good point.
right.
Yep.
To kind of bring it up to shiny, happy.
It needs a full restoration.
A restoration, I think, to,
Yeah.
to what it was 100 or 130 years ago.
Okay. Thank you.
And does anyone want the asbestos shingles on the side of it? Oh, no. Okay. Anybody else? Thank you so much. That's a great first run there. Thank you. I mean, more information, more images that I hadn't seen on this thing. There's lots of more work ahead of us, of course. But thank you so much. Some of you are going to come down, do a walkabout with us. And thank you everyone for being here for the session today. Could I get a motion to adjourn? So moved. All those in favor, say aye. Meeting adjourned. Oh, did you have something? Can we get a copy of this presentation? Yes. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.